So, what is the interview process like for International Mr. Leather? Let's talk about it. For those of you just joining, I am the current International Mr. Leather, and with IML just 3-ish months away, I decided to get on here and post some general advice and dissect the process of running for International Mr. Leather for anyone who's looking at competing either this year or moving forward. And today I wanted to discuss the part of the contest that usually makes people the most nervous, and that is the interview. Now, there's a number of reasons why someone might feel nervous going into the interview or thinking about the interview process with regards to running for International Mr. Leather. So I'm hoping to demystify some of that and make the process a little bit more comfortable. One thing I encourage you to keep in mind is interview feels a little misleading as a name. Now, yes, you are being asked questions to try to kind of gauge where you're at as a title holder and if you're going to be a good representative for the community and a good title holder, all that stuff. However, the big thing ultimately is this is more of a conversation than anything else. The judges are just trying to get to know who you are. So, with that in mind, here's some advice that might help you out in the process. First, the interview doesn't even start when you enter the room. The interview starts when you submit your application. And here's what I mean by that. The judges can ask you whatever they want, so long as it's relevant to the situation, right? Well, they draw those questions either from what they expect is required of the title, they draw those questions from your bio, they draw those questions from what you are presenting them more often than not. So what does that mean with regards to your application? That means when you fill out your bio, only include stuff that you are ready to talk about. If you are someone who's vying for the title of IML, you are on the younger side, let's say 22, 23, and you put in your bio that you have a lot of respect for like old guard values and long-standing traditions, if you're not actually ready to talk about that, don't include it in your bio because there's a really good chance that that's going to come up. Same thing with any hobbies and interests. It's a really good idea to, when you're fleshing out your bio, to include stuff to make sure that the judges know you're human and have hobbies, but don't just put stuff in for the sake of putting stuff in. For example, in my bio, I mentioned that I enjoy musical theater. One of the judges asked me a question pertaining to musical theater. Didn't have anything to do with IML specifically, but they just wanted to make sure that I was a well-rounded person that had hobbies and interests outside of the leather community. Now, circling back to that point I made about this being a conversation more than an interview, do your best to be relaxed during the interview. Have a conversational tone. The judges will look much more favorably on you if you are someone that is able to speak to them on a peer-to-peer level. Now, I recognize that chances are your judging panel for IML is going to be filled with title holders, long-standing community members, people that you likely strongly respect and admire, but they are normal people, just like you. And there is no reason to speak to them as if you are scared and intimidated. They want to know that you're able to hold a conversation. Now, for International Mr. Leather specifically, the interview process is 8 minutes. That is kept pretty strictly regulated. One of the big reasons, of course, is you're looking at like almost 70 contestants. Actually, I got confirmation, I think this year we're looking at 72, if not more. So the interviews can't be super long because every contestant is getting interviewed, right? So my advice, make the most of your time. So that means when you get asked a question, first thing you want to do is process the question, which means take a breath and give it at least half a second to a second before you answer. That way your thoughts are a little bit more clear, you're not stumbling as much, a lot less right? Second, try to answer most questions within 1 to 3 sentences if you can. Generally speaking, the more questions you get through during the interview, the better, because the judges have more to work with with regards to getting to know who you are. If you get through that 9 judging panel within the 8 minutes and you only get through like 3 or 4 questions, the judges don't have a lot to work on. However, if you manage to get at least one question from every judge, that is a lot more information that the judges have to kind of get a gauge for how they're judging you, who you are, where you're coming from, that kind of stuff. So try to keep your answers succinct. Now, by all means, explain the answer as much as would be necessary to really answer the question being asked. Just don't ramble. One of the other pieces of advice that comes up a lot is do research on your judges. And absolutely, know who your judges are as best you can before you get to the contest, let alone before you get to the interview process. Most of these people have an online footprint at this point, or at least some information that can be gleaned online. So do your research beforehand. Ask people in your community. Do some digging on Facebook, on other social media platforms, see kind of where they're coming from. And the reason for that is very simple. For me, from my perspective, it has a lot to do with the interview specifically. And that is because getting to know your judges isn't about presenting what you think they want and placating to them. In my opinion, getting to know your judges means you have a better idea of understanding where they are coming from when they ask you a question. So if one of the judges asks a question that feels a little vague, but you know for a fact that they have interest XYZ, you have a pretty good idea that, oh, this question probably pertains to this specifically. And you have a better shot of answering the question that's actually being asked. For example, during my interview, one of my judges in his bio mentioned that he wrote a book. I bought and read the book. So when it came time for his question for me during interview, the question that he asked didn't feel super specific. But the book that he wrote, which was autobiographical in nature, leaned heavily into the subject matter he was asking for, or that he was asking about. And I knew what he was actually asking and what he really wanted to know. So I could address the question that was actually being asked without really trying to guess at what he wanted. And the last part, do your best to be well rested, hydrated, and alert. Okay? So that means if you have an early morning time slot for your interview, get good rest the night before. Make sure that you've drank your water. Make sure you don't drink so much that you need to go pee in the middle of it. And make sure that you are fully engaged during the interview. Make sure that you are alert and aware of what's happening. And if that means you need to caffeinate a little bit beforehand, I understand. I think I had 2 Red Bulls before my interview. my time slot was 8 a.m. I was tired, so I did what I had to. And the last piece of advice, you're being asked a question from one judge, you are answering the entire judging panel. As you are answering the question, make sure you do your best to at least give eye contact to various judges, not just the one that asked you the question. Engage with the entire judging panel as best you can. And be aware, anything that you wear or present to the judges during interview can also be asked about. Your boots, your shirt, your vest, your pants, whatever. So just like with physique and stage presence, be intentional about what you are wearing and how you are presenting during the interview, because anything is up for grabs. The interview process can be incredibly daunting, but I hope I was able to relieve the stress a little bit.